judicial panels of inquiry be trusted? That's the question we're asking on today's show. It's the big question today because we're getting reports at the moment that at the Lagos panel, um, access to the panel is being limited, allegedly for security reasons. Public's access to the panel in Lagos is being limited, allegedly for security reasons. Details about that particular situation continue to trickle out, but it's causing quite the conversation on social media, on Twitter at least. Now, here's today's big hard fact. According to its chairperson, the Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry does not operate with all the rules of the courtroom. So that means some of the things that happen won't be the way we expect in court. So I'm going to try and find out today if these access restrictions fall under that. These are some of the questions I'll be asking my guest. He's a lawyer, he's a rights advocate. Inibehe Effiong, welcome back to Hard Facts.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right, Lagos, as we talk, calling with your questions for Inibehe as well, and tell us your observations about the panel. Have you been following? Have you been watching the Lagos one? Have you been following the ones in Anambra, the ones in Delta, the ones in Enugu? What have your thoughts been so far? Do you think these judicial panels of inquiry can be trusted? In Ibeye, we're getting reports that the Lagos State Judicial Panel is forbidding the recording of its proceedings going forward. Can you confirm whether this is the case?
Well, from what I have read and heard from those who were present at today's proceedings, there appears to be efforts by the panel to restrict media coverage. And I honestly do not know the basis for that. I do not think it is necessary. I do not think it is expedient. Because on the contrary, my thinking is that this will only further fuel public doubt and distrust in the panel. So why not allow the proceedings to continue as it was going on? Because I have been to that panel.
Right.
I do not understand why there is the pressing need for this sudden change. To begin with, under the Tribunal of Inquiry Law of Lagos State, this panel can only either be private or public.
Right.
This particular panel is a public panel, and the implication is that the proceedings are not only to be made accessible to the public, but that also implies that members of the public, including the press and the media, should have unhindered access not only to monitor the proceedings, but also to transmit and record events as it happens.
Yeah.
So for people to now be barred from using mobile phones, I do not think that is necessary. I do not think this development was expedient.
Now, how usual is it to have public hearings where filming is barred?
No, it is not necessary, frankly speaking, because this can only happen where the proceedings are to be held in camera.
So it's not necessary, but is it usual? Does it happen?
No, if it is a public proceeding, you cannot stop people from going with phones or using phones. Otherwise, it is no longer a public proceeding.
I see.
It will now become a proceeding that is done in private or in camera, as we lawyers call it technically.
Now, the Lagos SARS panel on Twitter tweeted, quote, contrary to the attempt of certain mischievous elements spreading disinformation about the sanitization of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry's hearing process, which has been hitherto disturbed by ringtones and disorderly conduct of some individuals covering the hearings, we feel the urge to restate that the hearings follow court process and there must be order. This was explained to the press, and most of them understood the need for decorum, as you can see from the pictorial evidence. There's no media blackout. These pictures were taken by an observer, and it clearly marked areas where phones are not allowed for those willing to cover the process with their devices. This is to avoid distractions. Now, you read a statement like that, and what do you think the judicial panel on Twitter is trying to convey here, Inibere?
No, the issue is simple. And it is a question I'm going to pose. If the use of phone is totally prohibited while the panel is sitting,
right,
it will be wrong. I do not think that can be justified.
Okay.
But if what they are saying is that, because I have sat in the conference room where these hearings are taking place. But if it is just to restrict the use of phones or gadgets to a certain part of the hearing room, then that can be excused.
Okay.
For convenience sake. But what I will not support is a situation where it is said that you cannot live stream with your phone, you cannot live tweet, you cannot be posting what is happening on social media live. I do not think that will be right. So, like I said, I have been at that panel. The room is not as big as it should be. Sometimes it doesn't even accommodate all the persons who want to be inside. Journalists are usually there in their numbers because of the public nature, because of the gravity and the seriousness of this hearing.
Right.
So you would naturally expect heavy media presence. And I do not, for me, it is also a distraction. It is a distraction. Let us not shift attention from the real mandate of the panel to the work of the media. I do not think the media should be censored. I do not think journalists should be dictated to on how to cover the proceedings of the panel. As far as their reports are fair, if there are specific reports or there's a particular conduct by a specific reporter or someone covering the proceeding that is being contested, then that should be said clearly. But let us not have a unilateral, decision that will be binding on everybody. If somebody has done something that is wrong, I have been at that panel, I have seen situations where somebody goes too close to the front, or somebody wants to squat at a particular spot, and the person will be asked to leave, and they've usually complied. So I have been there, I have seen order being restored. I have seen order being maintained.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that because the Lagos youth reps also tweeted, and they're saying that, quote, there is no media restriction, only media to the bar and their proceedings against disruption for vulnerable witnesses and security reasons. And then they go on to say that it is a tribunal holding a court proceeding. Because it's a public hearing doesn't mean there are no rules. If we hope to get justice, we have to limit distraction and protect vulnerable witnesses. Press wasn't restricted, only movement distraction during the proceedings was limited.
I agree, which is the point I made earlier, because for me, I haven't seen anything that is new. I have been there. I have seen cases where a reporter goes too close to the front to possibly where lawyers are sitting, which is the bar.
Yeah.
And the reporter will be asked to go back. I've also witnessed where, in the course of a hearing, somebody's phone will ring and the person will be asked to excuse the hearing to either walk out or the phone will be temporarily seized.
Yeah.
These are things that are permissible even in regular courtrooms.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that let us not create distraction. Let us not give room for people to raise alarm where there is none. Do not forget that many people have trust issues with this panel. And understandably so. There are people who believe that the government is not honest, that the government is not sincere in these investigations.
Right.
It is not necessarily about the members of the panel, okay? It is about the environment under which these panels are functioning. So there are people who are very, very anxious to see how these panels will conduct themselves across the country, in Lagos in particular. So what I am just saying is that I will continue to appeal to the panel, to the chairman, who is a retired judge. You also have a senior advocate on that panel, Mr. Bongodeguruwa.
Yeah.
You have Mr. Sega, and several other persons in that panel that I know personally. So what I'm saying is that I do not believe that these individuals can be dictated to by the government. But I also appreciate that they are functioning under a very difficult atmosphere. They are functioning under a climate of distrust. And these are things that they should be sensitive to. Because any wrong step, any mistake at this point can totally derail the work of that panel. People are still waiting to see whether this panel will even be able to do justice to the cases before them at the end of the day. Nigerians have doubts, and you cannot crucify Nigerians
for having doubt.
What will be the outcome, given our history as a country?
Speaking of which, there's a case in court questioning the validity of the panel. They claim that since Governor Sanwo-Olu says he brought in the army, he's part of the Lekki tollgate shooting being investigated. So a panel set up by him will be compromised. As a lawyer, what's your take?
Well, the court will determine whether that is correct or not. But what I do know clearly is that under the Tribunals of Inquiry law, the power to impanel these judicial commissions is vested in the governor. For example, in Lagos State, Section 1 of the Tribunals of Inquiry law, it is the governor that has a responsibility to constitute these panels. Let us give the panel the benefit of doubt. It is possible that government of the day may be duplicated in some ways. I've seen an example of that, for example, where a church building collapsed. The governor was partner present during the dedication, the consecration of the church as a bishop. So he was one of the survivors. When the governor now set up a judicial kind of inquiry before, I can tell you that there is no to stop the construction work. So the government what at the end of the day is the integrity of the man. It is their commitment to truth that will determine who is indicted and who is not indicted. It is not whether the governor himself played a role or not. That is no longer in dispute. The governor and the military have confirmed that the governor played a role. There is no way he wouldn't have played a role since he's the governor of the state. It is the role that he played that is being contested. So I do not think that because the governor himself, has been accused of complicity, that should necessarily deprive him of the... He don't do the Judicial. And the president can do panels and inquiry all over the country. I that point. The president can only constitute us the FCC. So who are we going to say should now constitute these panels if the governor does not do it? That is the question.
All right. Let's talk about...
The military clearly, as an institution, does not have the credibility to investigate itself, let alone to indict itself. So who will now conduct or set up these panels if the governor does not do it?
Now, let's talk about the panel proceedings itself. I want to use the examples from some of the cases to discuss technical and legal matters. So, for example, there's a case here in Lagos today, one Mr. Ndukwe. Mr. Ndukwe is accusing SARS officials of robbing his shop and throwing him from a two-story building, through the window of a two-story building, and crippling him. He's been coming to the panel of inquiry in a wheelchair, and he's been coming since it started. Now, the police counsel presented a statement he claims is from Ndukwe when he was legitimately arrested. Ndukwe is saying that his signature was forged. They've also shown him a search warrant. And all of that is making me wonder how easy or difficult it is to prove SARS abuse without witnesses. How easy is it for the police to, say, for instance, fabricate documents that cover them?
Of course, it is possible. It is possible, I'm telling you. It is possible. I have done a matter in court with the SSS where I strongly believe that the particular document was forged to aid their case. Okay. There's even a case I'm doing currently against the EFCC where they are also trying to forge a document to exculpate themselves from responsibility.
Okay.
We live in a country where, every time I speak with you, Sandra, I always talk about institutional credibility and institutional integrity.
Right.
Our institutions are very weak. Our institutions are very corrupt. There is no doubt about that. And as a lawyer who is involved in active litigation, I know what I'm saying. These are things that we see daily. But I know that ultimately, those documents will be subjected to scrutiny. The evidential value will be examined. The judges and the members of the panel will look at it and determine and come to a decision one way or the other. But we expect that, given the circumstances that led to this panel being constituted, I am hoping that these institutions will act with caution, because it's not only Nigerians who are watching to see the outcomes of this investigation. The international community is very much interested. So these individual cases must be given the attention that they deserve. Nigerians know the atrocious history of SARS. Many Nigerians have been slaughtered. Many Nigerians have had their lives cut short.
Yeah, but how easy is it, or how difficult is it to prove SARS abuse without witnesses?
How else is it going to be proved? Because at the end of the day, somebody is a victim. And if somebody comes out to say, this was what was done to me, we have to listen to the person.
Yes, but it's their word against the police's. How easy is it for that person to prove, yes, this is what was done to me, this is how it was done to me, if by your own words, the police can simply fabricate evidence to counter whatever the victim is claiming?
Of course, one way or the other, there will always be a way to discredit such fabricated evidence or documents. It is not such a difficult thing. For example, Ms. Andukwe, who has been coming in a wheelchair, I don't want to prejudge his case, but let me just make a brief observation.
Okay.
He comes before the panel and he says, I became incapacitated as a result of violence visited on me by SARS.
Right.
This was when this happened. This is the medical report. These are the persons who saw when I was arrested. These are the persons who came to visit me. I don't know if you get me.
Yeah.
Apart from direct evidence, there is what circumstantial evidence. It need not necessarily tie what happened to him to a particular officer.
Okay.
You get it?
Okay.
Because as much as it is necessary for people to speak to facts, it is possible for somebody to be killed by a police officer without the family of the victims, or somebody to be shot without the victim knowing the name and rank of that officer.
Okay.
Once you are able to show that this happened to you while you were in the custody of the police, the police as an institution will be held vicariously liable and responsible for what was done.
Now,
but of course, it becomes stronger if the perpetrators, the actual persons who committed this in the name of the Nigeria Police Force, are identified.
I'm glad you bring up identification, because we saw a similar situation this weekend with a lady who claimed that a SARS stray bullet hit her leg. The police council was basically reducing her testimony to hearsay. So again, how easy is it for victims of police brutality to identify the specific officers responsible?
Well, I speak from experience as a lawyer who, again, has been involved in human rights litigations against the police.
Okay.
I do understand what you are saying. What the policemen are doing or are trying to do at this hearing is basically to exculpate themselves, is basically to paint a picture that the victims' testimonies and evidence are not clear, are not reliable,
Right.
and should not be relied upon by the panel in reaching a decision. But do not forget, as I said, that nobody will just wake up overnight and go before these panels to present a petition, because even the witnesses are speaking under oath. So they understand the implications of going before the panel to lie.
So did the army, but the army told us at some point they were not there, and then they told us they were there with blanks, and then they told us that they were there with live ammunition. So being under oath isn't stopping, isn't exactly the deterrent one would hope it is.
I agree with you. Unfortunately, that is the situation in our justice system. But I still maintain the position that in the final analysis, no matter the denial, no matter how much the police try to discredit these petitioners, the evidence on record will speak for itself. It's not just their words. Look at like the Sandokwe. You cannot just say it is his words against that of the police. The man is on a wheelchair. And he says this was what led to me being on the wheelchair.
Right.
That is not a fact that can be disputed because it is real. It is something that we can see. It is empirical. And I strongly believe that there's no way he wouldn't have been treated at one medical facility or the other. The medical report will be tendered, will be exhibited, I strongly believe. And he should also be able to call other witnesses to support his case. So no matter how much the police try to divert attention from their trust that stands for come out at the end of the day, I believe this panel has indicted most of them. And I'm saying that because if you look at from history, as much as people have doubts in our justice system, there are courageous judges in this country. Look at like Kaduna, for example. Right. It was Governor Rufai who set up the panel of inquiry. At the end of the day, they implicated the military. They even gave the number of members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria who were killed. And I also told you about the panel of inquiry in Akwa Ibom, the panel that came up with very strong recommendations that indicted prominent people, including the founder of the church, and recommended their prosecution. The problem has always been with implementation. I do not believe that this panel can easily be compromised in terms of their decision to hold people accountable. What we should bother about is whether their recommendations will be implemented at the end of the day.
All right. If you just joined the show, hello to you. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Inibehe Effiong is on the show today. He's a human rights lawyer, and he is very involved in the NSAS litigation process. The panels have been set up as a result of the NSAS protests to take a look at some of the reports, some of the complaints, some of the cases of police brutality that Nigerians have reported. Today, we're taking a look at the different panels set up, like we've been doing every Tuesday since they started the process. And we wonder on the show if the judicial panels of inquiry can be trusted. We started the show by talking about the reports we got from the panel in Lagos about public access being limited, but we also, learned from different players in that story, and it appears that public access hasn't been limited. Only certain movements during proceedings have been limited to avoid distractions. And we're going to pivot and take a look at what's happening in Anambra, and all of that is going to continue after the break. We're streaming this conversation live on Facebook, Nigeria Info 99.3. We're streaming on YouTube as well, Nigeria Info FM. You can get in touch via Twitter at Nigeria Info FM or Facebook, Nigeria Info 99.3.
Nigeria Info. We'll be right back. 9 Mobile presents Crazy Ember Deals with up to 90Ember Deals! Get iPhone 12 Pro and much more at up to 99% discount.
That is ludicrous. It reminds me of those days when my role model, the late Ganefo, would have encounter with the institutions of state, with the police and the other security agents. And sometimes they would try to entrap him to give the impression that he fought with them. Sometimes they would try to make it look like it was a case of two fighting, as if they will even instigate people to attack him, hoping that he's going to respond so that they will say, oh, this was Afred, this was a case of two people fighting. Or, like, if this is the kind of lie, the kind of ludicrous things that we hear. You say that a man pushed himself and now became incapacitated. It doesn't make any sense. I did a matter against the police. I defended some protesters in Akwa Ibom. When we went to court, guess what? They charged them for attempted suicide. What was their offense? They went to government house to protest. And you had an assistant commissioner of police coming to court in his uniform to say, these people wanted to commit suicide. How can you claim people who were fighting for their gratuity wanted to commit suicide because they went to protest in government house? So what am I telling you? I'm telling you that our police is capable of saying anything. Do not also forget the case of the man whose name is Dob Buhari in this same country who was arrested. I was also involved in that case. So I have seen this. I have heard this kind of laughable, this kind of mischievous, this kind of silly excuses from the police as an institution over time. So there is nothing they will say that will surprise me. But the annoying part, the unfortunate part, is that we are talking about a victim. We are talking about somebody who is on a wheelchair, somebody who wasn't born with that condition, but became incapacitated because of the criminality of people who were supposed to protect him. So for them to come before the panel, to be asking questions, to be trivializing the seriousness of his condition, it is most unfortunate and tragic. I am hoping that the police will exercise caution in their approach to these cases. They should stop demonizing the witnesses. That is totally unnecessary. It is not necessary.
But again, that's hoping, for your opponent to have church mind. You have to take into account that given all the difficulties in proving that an individual case against a police officer, especially for old cases, and given that we agree as a society that there have been excessive abuses by SARS and the police, that it could, a case could be made for a reduction of the burden of proof or some sort of mass reprimand or dismissal because of the danger, because of an underlying danger of if they go case by case, the underlying problem may not be addressed.
Well, as far as I am concerned, even if the atrocity was committed 20 years ago, the fact that the police are disputing the records of the accounts of the witnesses is itself an indictment on the police. If the police is a serious institution, if you look at the Police Act and the police regulation, every case that is reported at the police must be incidental. It must go into the crime diary of that station. What does that entail? It entails that crime diary becomes a public document that should be kept, that should be protected,
right,
that should be accessible at any time that case is referenced, at any time that it becomes necessary to examine what are the facts of that case.
Right.
So if somebody is saying, I was arrested by SARS, what I want to hear is, what is their own account? Who was the investigating officer? What happened to him? When did he sustain this injury? Under what circumstance? So the police have a responsibility to come clean on each of the cases. They should stop pretending as if they do not have a responsibility to keep records. That is because it is a shoddy investigation. More often than not, they don't really do any serious investigation. They just go on a voyage of discovery, on a fishing expedition, scouting for non-existent evidence to nail the suspects. That is what happened in most of the cases. And because you had a SARS a department unit of the police that was basically, operating like a criminal organization. They had no regard. I don't know if you've ever been to a SAS unit. They don't have any regard for law. They don't have any regard for due process. They don't have any regard for official procedure. So it is not that kind of institution that will be coming to the panel of inquiry to be saying that, look, this couldn't have been so. This could have been so. They must produce evidence to show that what they themselves are saying is correct. The onus is on them. If they are saying that what these witnesses have said is not true, let them produce material evidence to the contrary.
Okay. All right, then. We have some petitioners who are representing themselves. Well, of course, the NBA has a lawyer present who can make objections on their behalf. Is it truly advisable for lay people to be bringing their complaints to this panel without legal representation?
My personal opinion or advice is that it will be tidier, it will be better, and more expedient to have these petitioners represented by a legal practitioner. The role of a lawyer in this kind of proceedings cannot be overestimated. It is important for them to be properly guided on their rights, particularly when they have to cross-examine the witnesses brought by the police.
Right.
If a lawyer is taking charge of the cross-examination, it's certainly going to be different from someone who does not have the advantage of having legal training. So these witnesses should be represented. And where they decide not to be represented, when they offer to represent themselves, because it's a constitutional right, self-representation is allowed, except, of course, in capital offenses where the law insists that a defendant must be represented. But in cases like the one we are seeing before the panel, petitioners have the right to represent themselves, but I would still advise them that they should seek legal counsel. They should be guided. They should seek advice from certain technical
But now
issues.
who get money they seek legal counsel now? No be so.
No, I don't think so. As far as this panel is concerned, the Nigerian Bar Association has...
Oh, no. Well, we're going to try to get Inibehe back on the line. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. And you're listening to us talk about the judicial panels of inquiry. Do you think they can be trusted? You can join the conversation, by the way. WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. 080-959-75805. Twitter is at Nigeria Info FM. And we've got... Facebook, Nigeria Info 99.3. So do let us know what your thoughts are about the proceedings so far. When we get Inibehe back on the line, we'll continue that conversation about pro bono legal services for these lawyers. And then we can move on to talk about Okwozo SARS, because some developments there. Inibehe, thank you for joining again.
Thank you, Sandra.
You were saying something before the rude interruption.
Yeah, that's fine. So I was making the point that I do not believe, in all honesty, that petitioners who do not have legal representation, are suffering because they do not have money to pay lawyers.
Right.
I know that the NBA has volunteered, has even set up, a committee, a sort of a committee to offer representation to anybody who is not represented. NBA even has representatives who are monitoring the proceedings.
Right.
I know, for example, that one of the petitioners went there. Lawyers even offered to stand in for him and insisted on representing himself. So I also made the point that there are also private legal practitioners like some of us who are very willing, ever willing and available to stand in for victims of human rights abuses, without having to think about money.
All right. Now, let me take you to Anambra State very quickly. We're hearing that James Nwafo, the former commander of Okwozo SARS, will be brought in to testify on the 8th of December. How likely do you think this is?
I'm hoping that is going to happen because Nwafo's case happened to be one of the most notorious, one of the most outrageous, one of the most abominable documented cases of atrocities committed by officials of the defunct SARS, the now disbanded SARS. It will be necessary for him to be put on the witness stand, for him to answer to the allegations that have been made against him, for him to speak, for example, to the case of Chijioke, who is being the same Wafo is being accused of killing. It is important for him to come clean on this allegation. The advocates had become an abattoir, a human abattoir. It was accused of slaughtering people en masse. It is important for him to come out and defend himself. But what worries me as a country is that despite the bad image that this particular officer has in the public eye, you had the governor of Anambra State offering him an employment, an appointment. It took public pressure and protest for him to be relieved of his position. And even at that, there have been intimation that the man had gone into hiding. So the police must produce it. The police have a responsibility to produce it. If it's not produced, that is enough for the hearing of the panel to be stalled. If he is a material, person who is under investigation, he has to come out and answer for his crimes. I do not have any pity on him. But beyond this investigation, Sandra, I have a strong fear. It is the fear of implementation. It is the fear of justice. Because justice in this case is not just closure for the victims. Because really, these victims cannot really be said to have closure if those who committed these atrocities are not diligently prosecuted. It is not enough to indict them. Are they going to be prosecuted? Look at the case of the National Human Rights Commission. The officers who were implicated in the investigation of 2018. You had the Attorney General of the Federation saying that they don't even have evidence to prosecute them. These panels cannot, many Nigerians don't seem to know, these panels of inquiry cannot convict anybody. I hope Nigerians are aware of this. They cannot convict. It is a fact-finding panel. They cannot punish anybody. All that they can do is to recommend prosecution, to recommend payment of compensation, to also indict. But they on their own cannot apportion punishment. So let us hope that at the end of the day, this is not going to be a rigmarole. This is not going to be a festival of sort that the public will just be entertained to the atrocious history of the disbanded SARS. Let us hope that those officials who are implicated, including the military, like in the case of the Lekki toll gate, will be punished. Because if at the end of the day, this is
Let's questions for Inibehe Effiong, who is rights lawyer. 0700-993-993-993. We have another number as well. Now, of course, you know that 0700 number is multiple numbers in one. Now, we've added an extra number, so you have about 7 lines that you can reach us on now. So try as well, 0146 57 190 0146 57190, and of course the main number 0700 993 993 993. What are your observations about the panels of inquiry so far? What are your observations about the Lagos State Panel of Inquiry specifically? What are your questions for Inibehe Effiong, who's on the show with us today? WhatsApp is available as well. WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. 080-959-75805. Chris Nokoko Michael is on the line. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
How are you? Welcome. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I must commend the barrister. He has done. A good one. The experiment. His explanation so far is quite. Amazing and welcoming by me. But one thing, I will encourage them to do is giving the story you've been narrating. I'm looking at, protection. How am I sure? Because from the picture he's painting during his explanation, it seems that, I don't think some of the people who came to, who came to testify, I'm seeing it from the angle of their study. They are not free. They are not at liberty. How are they being protected after coming to give their evidences? What will happen after? That is, how are they going to be protected? Because, we live in a total fear now. Because, I have watched several of the hearings, whereby, people are everybody, including the army, they are so economical about the truth. So, the people who are actually witnesses to those events, how are they going to make sure that they are going to be protected, even as the investigation are still going on, and thereafter when the prosecution probably may commence? Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling us, Chris. We appreciate it. Let's take a few more calls. We've got Bright in Lakwe on the line. Bright, how are you?
I'm fine. Good
Go
evening,
ahead.
Master.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to contribute to the program.
Yes, please. Go ahead. You're live on the show now. Go ahead.
My fear and my worries is that we are living in a country that we see white and our government will force us to believe it's black. Whether you like it or not, they will use force to follow you to believe that it's black.
Okay.
I'm just want to encourage the citizens that is there in the studio to keep up the good work. I know this is a fight. You can just finish one day, but I just still believe the panel that we are setting. How many times these panels, when they come, they will always come out to tell us stories that at the end of the day you will just believe. Like personally, I would just say, let me leave Nigeria matter and face my own business. So I just pray this very panel. I don't believe in any panel. To be honest with you, any panel they say it, I don't believe. Who are the people that said the panel? Who are the people heading the panel? Who are they reporting the panel?
Well, the people that set the panel is the state government. People who are on the panel are mostly retired judges. What was the other question you asked?
Who are they reporting to?
Who are they reporting to? Well, they will, at the end, I'll actually allow Inibehe answer that question because I'm also curious about that. But thank you so much for calling us, Bright. Inibehe, tell us what happens next, right? So they gather this evidence, they take all these reports. What happens after that?
Sandra, let me tell you another problem with these panels. I hope Nigerians are listening carefully. Under the Tribunals of Inquiry laws of the various states, including Lagos, Akwa Ibom, and other states, there's a provision that says that no evidence that is obtained during these panels is admissible in a court of law.
So we're wasting our time?
I'm not sure Nigerians are aware of that.
So we're wasting our time?
Well, I'm just revealing for the public to know that there is no evidence that is given at these panels that is admissible in a court of law. You cannot take what was admitted, what was said, what was tendered at these panels to a court of law.
So are we wasting our time?
Well, what I will say is this. That is why when I spoke, I said that I have a fear. I have a problem with this panel, the problem of implementation. And I didn't just say that. I spoke to precedent. I spoke to history. I gave examples. Like the Akwa Ibom panel, Judicial Panel of Inquiry that I told you of. Sandra, till today, is over 2 years. Till today, the report of that panel has not been implemented. The killed dozens of people in Akwa Ibom has not been prosecuted as recommended by the panel.
Now, Inibehe, if you say
have not been compensated.
If you say, Inibehe, that the evidence cannot be admitted in court, how is the evidence meant to be used?
Sandra, it's not what I said. It is what the law says. That is what
okay. So the law says the evidence can't be admitted in court. So how is the evidence supposed to be used?
Well, you recall when I told you about even the investigation by the National Human Rights Commission on SARS of 2018, where the Attorney General of the Federation, this is publicly available, came out to say that they do not have evidence to prosecute these officers. The National Human Rights Commission had to even come out to say that there is evidence. That is even for National Human Rights Commission. I am telling you again that no evidence given at these tribunals of inquiry or these panels across the country can be tendered in a court of law, except it is brought separately. What I mean is this. For example, in Nukwe's case, he comes before the panel to testify, to give evidence. And the panel takes record of what he says. The police is now called to testify. And of course, the evidence of the police is also recorded. That piece of evidence cannot be used in a court of law. Now, let me read to you what Section 8 of the Tribunals of Inquiry Law of Lagos State says. Please let the public listen carefully. I'm reading it verbatim.
Go ahead.
Evidence taken under this law shall be inadmissible against any person in any civil or criminal proceedings whatever, except in the case of a person charged with giving false evidence before the tribunal. In other words, there is no evidence that is adduced at the Lagos panel, for example, that can be used to prosecute any SARS or military official in court or even in a civil action in a regular court of law, except where somebody comes to the panel to lie and that person is being charged for perjury. It is only in that circumstance that that evidence is admissible. But in any other case, there is no evidence that is given at this panel that is admissible. I have always wondered why we have this kind of provision in these laws. I have always wondered. But of course, there is also the other argument that I can make, which is that admissibility under Nigerian law is governed by the Evidence Act. And there are decisions of the Supreme Court that says that state laws cannot govern the issue of admissibility of evidence. There have been recent Supreme Court decisions on that point, that state cannot legislate on evidence. But the problem here is that this is a special law that is made to govern the proceedings of these panels. And if the law setting up this panel says no evidence given shall be relied upon, I do not know whether any court will want to admit such evidence. I am just telling the public what the law says as that today. So this is where the problem is. At the end of the day, all that these panels can do, we can imagine that even the military is coming out arrogantly to say that the panels cannot indict them. Sandra, I don't know whether you may have read that.
I'm listening.
Yeah, correct. Legally, that is the truth. That is the position. The panel cannot punish the military. It can indict, of course. It will take the president and, of course, the military institutions to indict their officers who are implicated. The president, that you know, has a chronic unwillingness to hold military people accountable. That is the truth. The only people who have stayed in the military being punished under the Buhari regime are officers who are found to have made statements that went viral on social media criticizing either the absence of weapons to fight Boko Haram, like General Adeniyi, who has just been court-martialed and demoted, or like the military official who was arrested for encouraging his colleagues not to kill protesters. Those are the only officials, military personnel, who are being punished. No official that I know under Buhari regime that has been prosecuted for killing a civilian. I'm not aware of any. Nobody has been dismissed. Not the killing of Shahid, not the killing of IPOP, not the killing of people in Oyibo or any part of the country. None. So I am just, as much as we should be excited that these investigations are ongoing, the reality that stares us in the face is that chances of implementation is very low, which is why Nigerians should not go to sleep and say, oh, after all, government met your demand by setting up these panels. As far as I am concerned, we must continue to agitate one way or the other until these reports are implemented. The SARS, for example, SARS is under the police. If a police officer is indicted, like in the Quest case, the Police Service Commission will still have to sit and conduct orderly room trials for those of them who are still in service and punish them before anything can happen. That is the truth.
Right.
There must still be orderly room trials for police officers who are still in service, except those who have retired. Of course, they can be tried in regular courts. Even serving officers can also be tried, but in practice, that is usually after the orderly room trial. What is the point I am making? The sitting of the panels is only a step in the process of seeking justice. The real justice is going to be seen or known whether it will take place or not when these panels have concluded their findings. So let the media, let Nigerians not be carried away that these proceedings are ongoing. I have already told you the challenge with the admissibility of the evidence that is being given at these panels. I have also told you that these agencies are federal agencies. There is no government in Nigeria that can dismiss a corporal or a police constable. It's not possible. It's not possible. Sanwo-Olu cannot do anything to any police officer in Lagos. Only the police, the federal government can do it. Only the Police Service Commission, only the IG, only the police institution can do it. So at the end of the day, these panels will submit their reports to the governors. The governor will now submit their reports to the federal government and the relevant institutions of the federal government. So what does that leave us with? That is why, Sandra, in one of my interviews with you, I told you that it is unfortunate that your date, no money has been set aside as compensation. And people were telling me, why are you talking about money? I said, that should be the starting point. Lagos only made a small attempt to say, oh, we are setting aside 200 million, which I said was ridiculous. And I maintained that position. It is ridiculous. By now, all the states, because the states are also involved, and the federal government, in line with the resolution of the National Economic Council, the federal government should have come up to say, we are setting aside 10 billion to compensate victims of staff abuses across the country. Sandra, no such statement has been made.
Let's leave it at that.
Has been taken.
Let's leave it at that because we're completely out of time. But thank you so much, Inibehe Effiong, for joining us on today's show, as always.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure speaking with you once again.
Lagos, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Listening to your number one station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk. 99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.